Tales of Herding Gods Episode 52. Interpreting Classic Original Works, Savoring Human Destinies. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Records of the Wood God Original Work Analysis Series. This video is jointly produced by Feitian Xinhong and Mushi Shengxiang. Fellow Taoists who enjoy this, please like, share, and support us. Picking up from last time, Grand Mountain Records' 9th generation Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu were blocking the entrance of the Loulan Golden Palace. This was no mere sparring match, it was a battle of life and death. Qin Mu said to Qing Niu, "Bring me my satchel." Qing Niu stepped forward and took off the satchel he was carrying. Qin Mu first slung the knife sheath onto his back, with 2 pig slaughtering knives crossed within it. Then he slung the sword sheath behind the knife sheath, hung the large iron hammer, and tucked in a bamboo staff. With the whistling treasure sword at his waist, he looked utterly murderous. "I heard you used to herd cattle, yet you couldn't even defeat me. Can you defeat them?" Qin Mu stretched his body, his bones crackling loudly. He then declared, "I possess the hegemon body." Ling Yuxiu said, "My master has never been defeated under this golden gate." Never been defeated. Qin Mu's expression was calm. "I am a born hegemon body. Under the heavens, at the same cultivation realm, no one can defeat me." That witch with the bird-like attire took out 2 golden staffs and scoffed, "What hegemon body nonsense is this? Never heard of it." Qin Mu activated his primordial qi with the hegemon body 3 elixir technique. His primordial qi surged explosively. With a declaration of "I am the hegemon body," he stomped his foot. The golden ground beneath his feet immediately caved in, leaving a deep footprint. Boom! His body shot towards the bird-attired witch. His movement speed was so swift that only a series of afterimages could be seen. An unparalleled hegemon body. The bird-attired witch's expression changed drastically. He hastily flapped his wings to rise. Before his body could fully ascend, he saw Qin Mu's fist smashing towards him. That punch unleashed a dragon's roar that shook the air. His pupils constricted sharply. What he saw was not a single fist, but a fierce, coiling dragon's head. The next instant, he saw 2 dragon heads, then 3, then 4. His wings flapped frantically, but it was already too late to dodge. In his haste, he could only cross the 2 golden staffs in front of him. Whoosh! The bird-attired witch flew into midair, then exploded with a bang, transforming into a cloud of blood mist. From within the blood mist, dragon roars and cries echoed. The blood mist transformed into 45 blood dragons, as if it wasn't Qin Mu's punch that shattered the bird-attired witch, but these 45 blood dragons that burst his body. This move of Qin Mu's was precisely the 8 forms of Thunder Seal, 3rd form, 9 dragons wielding wind and thunder. It contained 45 types of dragon essence. On the golden platform in front of the mountain gate, Qin Mu, who had been moving with extreme intensity, suddenly became calm. His explosive primordial qi also abruptly subsided. His expression was serene. "Qing Niu, your master needs 100 days to defeat the Loulan Golden Palace." Qin Mu turned around, his gaze indifferent, sweeping across the witches below the golden platform. "As for me, I only need 1 day." He stood at the gate, his voice booming like thunder, reverberating throughout the Loulan Golden Palace. "I only need 1 day to completely destroy the will of all the disciples of the Golden Palace, crush all their self-esteem, and trample their dignity underfoot." Presumptuous. A witch roared in fury and charged towards Qin Mu. As he ran, his physical body underwent earth-shattering changes. His head skin flew off in tatters, and an elephant's head grew in its place. His body grew taller and more muscular. His clothes ripped apart with tearing sounds, and his limbs became as thick as elephant legs. A brilliant light emanated from his body's surface, as if a deity he worshipped had been resurrected within him, possessing boundless strength. His cultivation and strength were clearly much greater than that bird-attired witch from before. The bird-attired witch's body had not undergone such refinement, whereas this witch's body surface was like cast gold. Boom! A fist as large as a water vat smashed towards Qin Mu. The fist vibrated, and the air exploded with a thunderous roar. Die! The elephant-headed witch roared. Simu leaped, dodging the incomparably domineering punch that came crashing down. He surged forward, both hands gripping his knives, and rushed beneath the massive body of the elephant-headed witch. Knife light flashed. Pig slaughtering knife art, third form, lift knife, advance and retreat. Simu's figure soared into the air, then descended. As he landed, his two knives were sheathed back into the scabbard on his back. Meanwhile, the massive body of the elephant-headed witch split into two halves and tumbled down the mountain with a rumbling sound, staining the golden steps crimson with blood. A witch, eyes red with fury, suddenly unfurled a black banner and shouted at Simu, waving it, "I will refine your soul. Die." Simu had already sealed his soul with the creation demonic palace technique. He raised a hand and pointed. The sword sheath on his back opened, and a flying sword shot out with a sharp, piercing laugh, piercing through the witch's glabella. Kill. A furious female witch, Lihi, raised a bronze mirror and shone it towards Simu. Within the mirror, souls emerged one by one, struggling and malevolent. Suddenly, a flying sword appeared before the bronze mirror and fixed itself onto the mirror's surface. The bronze mirror was incredibly hard and actually blocked the flying sword. But the next instant, the flying sword suddenly spun, transforming into a drill-like form and directly drilled through the bronze mirror. The sword light shattered the mirror and pierced through the female witch behind it. What is there to fear from witchcraft? Simu's imposing aura surged as he raised his hand to recall the flying sword. Another witch's body grew tiger fur, tiger claws, and a tiger tail, and with a tiger's roar, he pounced forward to attack, giving Simu no chance to react initially. Simu turned sideways and punched. Their footwork was chaotic, and the sounds of bang, bang, bang from their fierce blows were incessant. The witch's head swayed and grew tiger hands. He roared like thunder, using his tiger's roar to assault Simu's soul. Simu used his fist as a seal and unleashed a punch. Sun illuminates Yang's soul, refining in the void. He spread his 5 fingers into a palm, and with a Mahasattva cry, unleashed the heavenly demon's self-sovereign will. His palm and fist techniques changed repeatedly, with Buddhist and demonic seals alternating. The tiger's roars only managed to sound 3 times before that witch's soul was shattered by Simu, and he fell stiffly to the ground. Suddenly, another grand witch of the 6 Harmonies realm pounced out. His cultivation was clearly more formidable than the witches before him. His divine abilities were freely wielded, and he maintained the appearance and form of an ordinary person, even though he had sealed his 6 divine vaults. However, once his cultivation technique was activated, they would immediately awaken, like a furious ape wielding a golden rod, possessing boundless strength and extreme agility. Simu reached out and plucked the bamboo staff, using it against the golden rod. The two clashed with lightning speed. Suddenly, the golden rod, which had been filling the sky with light, was abruptly withdrawn. The witch's chest was struck by the bamboo staff, revealing a look of shock. However, he was, after all, a grand witch of the 6 Harmonies realm, not a mere witch. He decisively unsealed his 6 Harmonies divine vaults. Yet, the very instant his 6 Harmonies divine vaults were unsealed, his heart was pierced by the bamboo staff. His body fell to the ground. Simu pulled the bamboo staff from his chest. A grand witch of the 6 Harmonies realm was called a divine ability practitioner in Yankai Nation. It was merely a difference in terminology. There was no essential difference. If this divine ability practitioner had not sealed his 6 Harmonies divine vaults, Simu would have found it difficult to kill him. But as long as he fought opponents at the same realm as himself, he possessed the strength to kill them, regardless of whether the opponent was previously at the 6 Harmonies realm or the 7 Stars realm. A golden warrior leaped onto the golden platform, landing heavily. On his back was a knife sheath taller than a person. He suddenly opened his mouth wide and roared at Simu. From the knife sheath on his back, knife light whistled out, and a torrent of knife shadows slashed down towards Simu. At the same time, the golden warrior, holding 2 knives, brandished them and attacked. The two knives whistled in front of him and whistled behind him, like two giant pythons coiling around him and rolling towards Qin Mu. Qin Mu held a pig slaughtering knife in a standard grip in one hand, and another pig slaughtering knife in a reverse grip in the other. From the sword sheath on his back, flying swords shot out with a chi-chi sound, meeting the descending knife light. Pig slaughtering knife art, horizontal and vertical, boundless as the sky, a single thread of light. The golden warrior's body split into 4 pieces, slain by the horizontal and vertical knife light. Qin Mu shook his knives, flicking off the blood, and with a backhand motion, sheathed both pig slaughtering knives. Suddenly, he raised a hand and pointed. With a dingling sound, a flying sword unsheathed and pierced through the heart of a witch who was drawing a primordial chi bao, about to shoot an arrow at him. Kill him to avenge our brothers. More witches continuously pounced forward. Qin Mu moved swiftly, using either knives or swords from his back, or fists or feet, killing each challenging witch on the spot. After a moment, there was no longer any sound in the area. In front of the Loulan Golden Palace's mountain gate, on the golden steps, more than 40 corpses lay scattered. Qin Mu looked down at the platform. Below, he saw faces filled with terror, their terrified eyes meeting his gaze and involuntarily shifting away, daring not to meet his eyes. These witches possessed strong spiritual will, but after Qin Mu continuously killed over 40 of them, this spirit and will inevitably began to wane. Once it began to wane, it would fall further and further, giving rise to fear, to cowardice at the thought of being unable to defeat him, and to respect and dread for Qin Mu. What Qin Mu had witnessed along the way had ignited a surge of anger towards the Loulan Golden Palace within him. General Torimu, when ordering his soldiers to collect the souls of the rebels, had said they were to be offered to the Loulan Golden Palace. At the time, he hadn't understood, but now he did. So, the Loulan Golden Palace actually used souls for cultivation. He hadn't come this time just to block the gate, but to retrieve the butcher's lower body. However, since the distinction between friend and foe was clear, he would destroy this sect's will and spirit, crush their confidence, and trample all their cultivation methods underfoot. He would make them realize that the divine abilities they cultivated using the souls of others were utterly worthless. Which of you has cultivated the Loulan Golden Palace's Wuzun Lu Luojing? Qin Mu looked around, his expression cold and indifferent, then a faint smile slowly appeared at the corner of his lips. I want to kill one. Silence fell before the mountain gate. Behind the mountain gate, the grand witches of the Golden Palace, whose bodies were like solid gold, their faces gradually turned ashen. After a moment, a young man stepped out. A middle-aged grand witch beside him said, Simu Luo, his weakness is too thin above his left shoulder blade. This is a flaw in his cultivation technique, a spot he hasn't trained. The young grand witch said, I've already seen it, but I couldn't pinpoint the exact location. Thank you for your guidance, Witch King. The Grand Mountain Libationer's expression was calm, and he sneered, Witch King, as an elder, isn't such shamelessness a bit inappropriate? The middle-aged Grand Witch raised his hand indifferently and said, Wu Khan, all right. Back then, I was defeated by you. After much painful reflection, my cultivation and strength have advanced by leaps and bounds over the years. I've always wanted to wash away that humiliation. Heaven has pity on me. You finally delivered yourself to my doorstep. The Grand Mountain Libationer suddenly soared into the sky, emitting a light like a giant blade, 100 zhang long, slicing through the sky and vanishing into the distance. His voice drifted from afar. The people here have too low cultivation. I fear that if we fight, the shockwaves will kill them. Let us go to the snow mountains to clash. The middle-aged Grand Witch looked at Wuzun. Wuzun rose and said in a deep voice, Go. Streaks of golden light shot through the air, directly chasing after the blade light, heading towards the snow mountains. The tall mountains trembled slightly, white snow stretched boundlessly. Suddenly, golden light burst forth, melting the heavy snow. Within the golden light, a dazzling blade light flashed. An earth-shattering battle was taking place there, but only faint ripples reached the Loulan Golden Palace. Below the Golden Palace's mountain gate, Qin Mu turned around and looked at Simu Luo, who was descending from the Golden Palace's sacred hall. The Grand Mountain Libationer had drawn away many experts from the Loulan Golden Palace. He probably wanted to make it easier for Qin Mu to search for the butcher's lower body. However, in front of the sacred hall, a few elder experts of the Golden Palace still remained. Simu Luo's expression was solemn, but his eyes held a hint of excitement. His body was also golden. Earlier, when Qin Mu fought those witches, he had been observing from the side. The reason he hadn't directly stepped forward, besides wanting to see if Qin Mu had any weaknesses, was also to let these witches engage Qin Mu in a will battle to deplete Qin Mu's cultivation and give himself a greater chance of victory. Now he had found Qin Mu's weakness, and Qin Mu had fought continuously against over 40 people. His opportunity had arrived. Qin Mu's expression was as calm as an ancient well, without ripples, so serene that it didn't seem like he had just gone through over 40 battles. Suddenly, both figures moved simultaneously. Primordial qi surged from Qin Mu's feet, making his speed extremely fast. In an instant, he appeared before Simu Luo. He unleashed a punch, 8 forms of Thunder Seal. First form, alone in the East Sea, carrying spring thunder. Simu Luo took his punch, but it only produced a sound like a giant bell being struck. Qin Mu immediately felt his punch as if it had struck a copper wall and iron barrier. Not a single bit of force was transmitted through. Simu Luo's body seemed to be forged from the hardest metal and of the solid kind. Simu Luo's body swayed, then suddenly transformed into a bird-headed human body with a pair of wings on his back. Those golden wings glittered brightly, composed of countless golden swords. The golden swords clanged and slashed forward. Qin Mu's footwork became chaotic as he retreated. From the sword sheath on his back, flying swords unsheathed one by one, meeting the incoming sword feathers. The sharp swords that formed Simu Luo's wings suddenly expanded and flew off his wings, stabbing at Qin Mu from all directions. On each of these golden swords, there was actually a single dark eye, eerie and sinister. Within each golden sword, a soul was imprisoned, transformed into the sword's spirit. Qin Mu's gaze fell upon those eyes, and he suddenly felt dizzy and disoriented. Knowing something was amiss, he immediately closed his eyes and adopted a defensive stance. He Gemin Pig, slaughtering knife art, first form, night battle, continuous city wind and rain. His knife flight was swift, flashing ceaselessly around him, front and back, up and down, left and right. Clanging sounds of collision rang out. The night battle, continuous city wind and rain already indicated that this move did not require the eyes to perceive. Simu Luo's swords were extremely eerie, and looking at them would cause one to fall victim to their power. Thus, using this move was the correct choice. The Wuzun Lu Luojing was indeed extraordinary and quite threatening. Qin Mu's knives clashed with the opponent's swords, and he immediately felt that the power within the opponent's swords was not as strong as his own combat technique style. The strength of his style lay in wielding weapons, which allowed him to unleash all his power. Simu Luo's golden swords, one by one, were parried by night battle, continuous city wind and rain, and returned to his back with a whoosh, forming 2 golden wings. His wings flapped, clanging and clattering, blocking the sharp swords shot from Qin Mu's sword sheath. Suddenly, Qin Mu's 2 knives flew from his hands, and he unleashed a punch, like a great sun shining down on the Yang soul from above. Simu Luo was illuminated by his punch, and his spirit wavered slightly, but his technique remained perfectly steady. However, the eyes on his swords were covered and closed one after another, each eye emitting a miserable shriek and transforming into streaks of clear smoke. Qin Mu then struck out with the self-sovereign heavenly seal in a backhand motion, but Simu Luo remained completely still. The Wuzun Lu Luojing used the souls of others as cultivation materials, making his own soul incredibly stable. His body was also exceptionally hard, so much so that even the 8 forms of Thunder Seal couldn't shake it. Qin Mu frowned slightly. Suddenly, he pointed a finger. The 36 flying swords that flew from his sword sheath merged with a whoosh, transforming into a drill-like form and stabbing towards Simu Luo. Simu Luo's wings flapped, the swords forming his wings, protecting his front, constantly shifting and changing positions, attempting to block Qin Mu's attack. But the next moment, the drill-like sword broke through his wing defense. Simu Luo's heart trembled, and a sharp pain shot through his chest. His golden body was actually unable to block the drill-like sword. He immediately flapped his wings and rose, his wings stirring up a gust of strong wind. Whoosh! As the strong wind just began to blow, Qin Mu immediately stepped on the wind and moved. An expression of terror appeared in Simu Luo's eyes. Qin Mu's speed as he ran through the air was actually faster than his own winged flight. Simu Luo let out a shout, and the swords forming his wings flew out one by one, stabbing towards Qin Mu, attempting to prevent Qin Mu from approaching. His wings were emptied in an instant, leaving only two glittering golden fleshy stubs. His body immediately plummeted. At this moment, knife light, like a waterfall, collided with the golden swords that came rushing towards him. With a chi sound, a golden sword pierced through Qin Mu's waterfall of knife light and embedded itself in his left shoulder. It was precisely 2 feet above his left shoulder blade. Meanwhile, Qin Mu's figure also arrived before Simu Luo, passing him by. A dazzling blade light sliced across Simu Luo's neck. The blade light was very thin. It seemed to have struck Simu Luo, sinking into his neck and emerging from the back of his neck, yet it also seemed to have caused him no harm at all. Simu Luo landed. Golden swords flew back one by one with a whoosh, returning to his back and forming 2 wings. Those 2 glittering golden wings spread open with a whoosh, radiating golden light. A voice, both surprised and delighted, cried out, "Senior brother Simu Luo. Well done!" Other witches were also greatly encouraged and shouted, "Senior brother Simu Luo. Defeat this slave of Yankang." Yankang people are merely 2-legged sheep, only fit to be used for cultivation, and unworthy of living in this world. Qin Mu landed. Flying swords flew back one by one and returned to the sword sheath on his back. He pulled out the golden sword from his shoulder and threw it to the ground. His brocade robes were still intact. When this sword stabbed, his brocade robes blocked it for a moment. However, it still pierced into his shoulder blade area along with the robes. Below the golden platform, cheers shook the heavens. Simu Luo was still spreading his wings, looking majestic, seemingly enjoying the crowd's cheers. Qin Mu walked forward. The cheers gradually subsided. He raised his hands and sheathed his 2 knives back into the scabbard on his back, and arrived beside Simu Luo. But Simu Luo remained motionless, still spreading his golden wings behind him, without any guard or resistance. Qin Mu raised his hand, grabbed his hair, and gently pulled. He plucked Simu Luo's head from his neck and tossed it off the platform. The cheers below the golden platform abruptly ceased. Ling Yuxiu hastily stepped forward, wanting to bandage his wound. Qin Mu waved his hand, saying, "It's nothing. I said I would break their will, and I will certainly do it. Just rest assured." Ling Yuxiu frowned slightly, feeling that Qin Mu was a bit too confident. "Her boy, your shoulder is injured, and the weakness in your shoulder will become even greater. What if another grand witch cultivating the Wuzun Lu Luojing appears?" No matter what Ling Yuxiu thought, the inevitable would eventually come. He had just finished speaking when, suddenly, in front of the Loulan Golden Palace's sacred hall, another young grand witch with a glittering golden body walked over, a smile on his face. He softly said, "Simu Luo was still a bit too green, but he was too steady. That's why he died. I am Donghua Luo, 6 Harmonies Realm. I have sealed my 6 Harmonies Divine Vaults." Qin Mu's expression became solemn. Suddenly, his figure drifted backward, his feet tapping continuously. He moved like a lonely shadow, swift and elusive. Donghua Luo laughed heartily and pursued him like a shadow. In his hand, he held a large hammer. The hammerhead was a massive, dark golden skull, with 7 bone spikes growing from it. Each bone spike had a smaller skull attached, only the size of a fist. All 8 of these skulls actually had eyes in their sockets, looking terrifying and dreadful. Luo lightly shook the hammer, and the 7 smaller skulls on it immediately opened their eyes, their eyeballs rolling wildly. Then they opened their mouths, and plumes of black smoke spewed forth from the skulls' mouths. The black smoke weaved up and down like black jiao dragons, heading directly towards Qin Mu, who had landed on a golden hall. From Qin Mu's sword sheath, sharp swords flew out one by one, and one by one, they severed the black jiao dragon heads formed by the black smoke. But immediately, the flying swords lost control and clattered to the ground. Qin Mu immediately felt his primordial qi being contaminated. His heart trembled. The Wuzun Lu Luojing was clearly like the Great Yu heavenly demonic scripture, all-encompassing, containing more than one cultivation technique. The Simu Luo from before cultivated one of them, following the path of sword art's divine abilities. This Dan Luo, however, cultivated another, following the path of spell art's divine abilities. Although both cultivated the Wuzun Lu Luojing, they followed different paths. Qin Mu's footwork shifted, and the golden tiles of the golden hall beneath his feet shattered with a whoosh. Streaks of black smoke, like black jiao dragons, drilled in and out of the golden hall, attacking him. Their figures darted like gourds, running across the golden halls, where even the walls seemed like flat ground. Suddenly, Qin Mu's body sank, and he fell into that golden hall. Dan Luo sneered and swung his great hammer, smashing through the golden hall and charging in. Bang! A figure shot into the sky, waving his hand as flying swords stabbed backward. Dan Luo followed closely, rushing out, his feet stepping on a streak of black smoke. The black smoke continuously surged and rolled forward, carrying him towards Qin Mu. With a bang, Qin Mu smashed through another golden hall and dove inside to evade Dan Luo's assault. Dan Luo immediately charged in after him, his aura fierce and menacing. The witches and grand witches of the Loulan Golden Palace watched, feeling a surge of pride and relief that swept away their previous dejection. They didn't know that Qin Mu was actually doing it on purpose, following a predetermined route. The two raced across the golden halls among the mountains, moving swiftly, trying to kill each other. As they moved further and further from the mountain gate, Dan Luo's confidence grew stronger and stronger, and his attacks became fiercer and fiercer. When Qin Mu finally dropped into a golden hall, Dan Luo directly charged in. However, what greeted him was a magnificent landscape of rivers and mountains. It was precisely the sword art taught by the village chief, sword disciple, first form, sword traversing rivers and mountains. Dan Luo felt as if he was rapidly shrinking and falling into that landscape of rivers and mountains. Panic involuntarily rose in his heart. Before and behind the mountain gate, everyone was tense, looking intently at the golden hall where the two had fallen. After a moment, suddenly, a glittering golden figure leaped out from the golden hall, standing on the roof. One hand gripped the hammer, and the other hand held high a severed head. The crowd of the Loulan Golden Palace cheered deafeningly. Meanwhile, Ling Yuxiu's face instantly turned ashen, her mind in a state of disarray. Qing Niu was also stunned. Hu Linger was also stunned. The Her boy is dead. Ling Yuxiu's mind went blank. In front of the sacred hall, those few Loulan Golden Palace, which kings rarely showed smiles, but they exchanged glances and nodded slightly. Dan Luo is quite good. He's ruthless and very steady. He's a great talent, even surpassing ordinary talents. An elderly witch king said in surprise, "Why isn't he returning to the sacred hall?" They saw Dan Luo, still holding the head, jump back into the golden hall beneath him, instead of returning to the mountain gate. Another witch king laughed, "Most likely, he's also injured." Dan Luo is naturally cautious. After being injured, he would definitely heal immediately, leaving no hidden dangers. This is also what makes him promising. Now, only this little girl remains, and she will soon die too. I wonder how the battle on the other side of the mountain is going. The Witch Kings were inclined to go to the snow mountains to observe the battle, but they were ordered to remain here and guard the sacred hall. Inside that golden hall, Dan Luo tossed the head aside, took out a scroll, and gently unrolled it. He carefully examined it. The The Loulan Golden Palace's treasure vault is right next to this great hall. I haven't come to the wrong place. He closed the Loulan Golden Palace's geographical map and walked out. Could Simu have been killed by Donghua? That was impossible. Clearly, this Donghua was, at this moment, Simu himself, wearing a human skin, a disguise created by Granny C's creation demonic palace technique. Suddenly, Donghua took out a jade bottle and carefully extracted some dragon saliva, applying it to the wound on his shoulder. Soon, the wound healed. Donghua put the jade bottle back, thought for a moment, and held the whistling treasure sword in his hand. He walked out of this golden hall. He quickly arrived at another great hall. In front of that great hall, a golden figure with a tortoiseshell on his back, holding an axe halberd, stood guard. Seeing him approach, he asked in surprise, Donghua, what are you doing here? This disciple killed the villain who came to block the gate and obtained a treasure sword. I dare not keep it for myself and intend to offer it to the sacred cult. Donghua respectfully offered the whistling treasure sword with both hands and smiled, I don't cultivate the sword. Although this sword is good, it's useless to me. So I wish to use this treasure to exchange for another treasure. The tortoise-backed guard took the whistling treasure sword, and as he pulled out the blade, which was covered in a radiant glow, he couldn't help but squint his eyes. He exclaimed in surprise, what a fine sword. You actually obtained such a treasure. Wu Zun will surely reward you handsomely. He pushed open the hall door. Donghua hastily said, Disciple, may I also go in and select a treasure? The tortoise-backed guard thought for a moment and said, Very well. You have accomplished such a great deed and offered such a valuable treasure. Wu Zun's reward for you will surely be excellent. However, you can only look inside. The treasures collected by my golden palace cannot be taken away yet. Only when Wu Zun bestows it upon you, and the seal is lifted, can you take it. Donghua was overjoyed and quickly followed him into this golden hall. The tortoise-backed guard stood in the hall and carefully opened several restrictions. After walking a few more steps, he took out a talisman treasure. It was formed by stacked runes, a treasure with 4 directions, 14 faces, and 24 corners. Primordial chi was injected into it, and the talisman treasure floated up, gradually illuminating. As the talisman treasure grew brighter, it began to spin continuously, projecting the runes on each of its faces and casting them into the air. Donghua immediately saw that the air before them, which had been colorless and transparent, gradually began to change. It transformed into many translucent cubic blocks. Within each cubic block, a fist-sized humanoid figure was hidden, with a fierce countenance, anxiously pacing back and forth within the cubic block, as if wanting to break out and devour people. Strange restrictions. Each humanoid figure seemed to be refined from the souls of powerful cultivators, extremely strong, knowing only slaughter. These strange cubic blocks formed an incredibly complex lock. Runes were projected onto them, and only when the rune's form was correct could it unlock. Otherwise, these humanoid figures would be released. These translucent cubic blocks were countless, extremely numerous. When the runes projected by the talisman treasure shone upon a cubic block, that cubic block would recede backward and disappear. The steps to unseal are so complex. Without this talisman treasure, it would be difficult to accomplish. The talisman treasure spun continuously, and the runes projected from its 14 faces also changed endlessly, causing the cubic blocks before them to continuously recede. The talisman treasure floated forward. The tortoise-backed guard stepped forward. Donghua hastily followed, step by step. They walked through a long passage. Suddenly, their vision opened up. The interior of the Golden Hall was a world of its own. From the outside, this Golden Hall didn't seem large, but from the inside, it was at least 10 times bigger. Pillars stood tall like platforms, followed by golden altars of various sizes. On each golden altar were placed strange and wondrous treasures. The tortoise-backed guard walked forward, carrying the whistling treasure sword. He said, such a valuable treasure must be placed in the deepest part, in the most honored position. My magic power is not enough to seal it. Only when Wu Zun comes to personally seal it. Donghua Luo, you have rendered a great service. Even I am very envious. Donghua Luo hastily said, from that Yenkong person, I obtained more than one treasure. I also got a small jade bottle, which most likely contains spirit medicine. I sniffed it, and the scent was incredibly wonderful, as if I was about to become an immortal. He took out a small jade bottle from his sleeve. The tortoise-backed guard saw it, his eyes lit up, and he snatched it from Donghua Luo's hand. He laughed, Donghua Luo, you've rendered a great service. Wu Zun will certainly reward you handsomely. I brought you here in advance to choose treasures. How can you not offer me a token of respect? Give me the sacred medicine in this jade bottle. Donghua Luo's face showed a pained expression. Seeing his pained expression, the tortoise-backed guard said, stingy. He twisted open the jade bottle, placed it under his nose, and took a sniff. So fragrant. With a satisfied smile still on his face, the tortoise-backed guard fell stiffly to the ground. Donghua Luo held his breath and quickly snatched the jade bottle from his hand. He stoppered the bottle, not daring to breathe a single breath. He then took out another jade bottle and collected the surrounding air into it. Then he pried open the tortoise-backed guard's mouth and placed the open jade bottle into his mouth, letting him hold it. This way, he won't wake up for a while. Whoosh! Donghua Luo exhaled a turbid breath, then began to shed his skin. Another person emerged from Donghua Luo's skin sack. It was precisely Qin Mu. Qin Mu retrieved the whistling treasure sword and then searched the tortoise-backed guard's body. He found the talisman treasure and tucked it into his embrace. He activated his divine dissipation, heavenly eye opens technique. Dense runes formed a double heaven in his pupils, and he looked around. Everything here immediately became clearly layered before his eyes. Each golden altar here was tightly sealed, similar to the cubic blocks he had just seen. Within each cubic block, a fierce-looking humanoid figure was hidden. However, without the heavenly eye, they were completely invisible. Qin Mu picked up the talisman treasure and carefully examined the 14 faces of runes on it. He compared them and shook his head. This talisman treasure is not the key to unsealing the golden altars. It can probably only be used to open the golden hall. He walked forward, looking at each golden altar. He had to hurry. Outside, Ling Yuxiu should still be blocking the gate. Ling Yuxiu's abilities were a notch below his, and although she had learned the Grand Mountain Libationer's battle techniques, she probably wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. The treasures on the golden altars varied, many of them unique to the Loulan Golden Palace and very strangely refined. There were paintings on human skin, inscribed with runes. There were bowls made from human skulls, and drums made from human skin, as well as white bone bowls, lead poison world soul bowls, and white bone divine altars. All were demonic and unorthodox magical artifacts. But besides these, there were also many valuable items. Glittering with golden light, they appeared to be treasures refined by beings at the Witch King level. Qin Mu also saw some treasures not belonging to the witch cult, which were also placed here. There were golden stupa sariras, which should be important treasures of the Buddhist sect. There was also a sword tablet the size of a grape, an ancient zither with one end charred, and a broken sword. Suddenly, Qin Mu stopped in his tracks. He couldn't move. On this golden altar stood a stone tablet. Carved on the stone tablet was a palace meridian fragment map. He only needed one glance to recognize it as a palace meridian map of the Hegemon Body 3 elixir technique. However, it wasn't a palace meridian map for the Six Harmonies realm, and in his haste, he couldn't tell which realm it was for. Haha, he can't tell. But old Demon Hong knows. Naturally, it's a palace meridian map for the Seven Stars realm. Go! Find the legs. Qin Mu urged himself and dashed like lightning towards the depths of this treasure vault. After a moment, he had swiftly traversed the entire area, then stopped before a golden altar. He had already seen this golden altar once, yet he still returned here in the end. On the golden altar lay a person's lower body, only the part below the waist. Qin Mu could confirm that this was not the butcher's lower body. This half-body glittered with golden light. Even its blood seemed to be golden, and its bones were also gold. The body exuded a terrifying aura, even more powerful than a witch king. Could it be Wu Zun's body? Wu Zun had destroyed the sect that stole Grandpa Butcher's lower body and taken it. Then Wu Zun cut off his own lower body and placed it here. Grandpa Butcher's lower body should have been here, but it was gone. Qin Mu's eyelid twitched as a terrifying possibility came to mind. Wu Zun cut off his own lower body and attached the butcher's lower body to himself. With my medical skills, I could completely achieve this, and Wu Zun should also be capable of it. Alright, congratulations to Qin Mu for guessing correctly. That was indeed the truth. Qin Mu's scalp tingled. Cutting off one's own lower body and attaching someone else's lower body. What was Wu Zun aiming for? Perhaps he believed that Grandpa Butcher's physical body was even more formidable than his own golden limbs, something he could never achieve in his lifetime. That's why he swapped his own lower body. However, there was also another possibility, that Wu Zun had refined Grandpa Butcher's lower body into a pair of two-legged spirit weapons. Qin Mu's expression was strange. He couldn't help but look at the lower body on the golden altar. The surroundings also had sealed restrictions. If he reached out, he would surely be devoured by the humanoid figures in those cubic blocks, leaving not even bones behind. If the Grand Mountain Libationer were here, he could simply violently destroy these seals and restrictions. But Qin Mu didn't have that ability. The heaven-stealing sun-swapping hand that Grandpa Cripple taught me, I've never used it before. Can it pass through the restrictions and retrieve that half-body? His heart pounded. Suddenly, he dashed wildly through this treasure vault, activating the heaven-stealing divine legs technique taught to him by Cripple. His speed was like fleeting light and moon shadows, so fast that the naked eye could barely catch it. As Qin Mu dashed, he simultaneously performed the heaven-stealing sun-swapping hand. His hands moved faster and faster, like light and electricity. Cripple's entire skill set lay in his legs and hands. His legs ran fast to escape when caught stealing, and his hands moved fast for stealing. Qin Mu's heaven-stealing divine legs and heaven-stealing sun-swapping hand were performed simultaneously, instantly increasing the speed of his primordial qi circulation by several times. This meant his leg speed and hand speed could also increase several-fold. Qin Mu composed himself and looked ahead. The interior of the Golden Hall's treasure vault was extremely spacious, with enough room for him to run. He suddenly exerted force, and his feet dashed forward like a flying bird. Tearing and whistling sounds were incessant. Qin Mu whistled through the air of this treasure vault, stepping on air as he sped away, and in a blink, whistled back. Suddenly, mid-dash, he reached out and plucked something. A golden altar was now empty. In Qin Mu's hand was a bowl refined from a skull. The bowl clattered to the ground. Qin Mu laughed heartily, dashing wildly with abandon, and as he flashed past the golden altars, he reached out his hand. One by one, the golden altars became empty, their treasures strewn everywhere on the ground, having been tossed by him. After a moment, all the golden altars were swept clean by him. Then Qin Mu, carrying the two great legs, swept past a golden altar. His figure suddenly paused. He put down the glittering golden lower body. No wonder Grandpa Cripple always loved stealing things. It turns out stealing is so exhilarating. Qin Mu exhaled a turbid breath and looked back. The ground was littered with treasures he had tossed. He felt refreshed and invigorated, praising, "Even if I lose a leg, it's worth it." Qin Mu suddenly realized that this thought was very dangerous. Cripple's leg was lost exactly this way. If he himself were to fall into the same madness Cripple had before he became crippled, the madness of stealing, he probably wouldn't be far from Cripple's fate. Although this feeling was exhilarating, he warned himself to indulge in it less often in the future. He looked back again at the various treasures on the ground. Except for the evil treasures refined by the Loulan Golden Palace, he wanted to take all the others. However, the things he could carry were limited, as he had no storage pouch. Qin Mu could only take a limited number of items. Was there any way to take everything from the treasure vault all at once? Tune in next time for the explanation. More people interpreting destiny, please follow Feitian Xinhong and Mushi Xingxiang. Original author of Records of the Wood God, Zhaizhu. Don't go out after dark, a triple shot ensures peace. Okay, that's all the content for this video. If you enjoyed it, Please don't hesitate to like, share, and subscribe. After all, your support is my motivation to keep creating content. I'm Simu. See you in the next video.